Voice of San Diego podcasts are sponsored in part by a proud supporter of Monarch School and Make-A-Wish San Diego. As a nonprofit news organization, we depend on our members, foundations, and sponsors to provide funding to support the investigative journalism you expect from us. We are very grateful for all of our supporters, and we will recognize them during the show. Make-A-Wish San Diego grants wishes to children with critical illnesses in San Diego and Imperial counties. Visit sandiego.wish.org to find out how you can help make wishes come true. And Monarch School has served San Diego for nearly 3 decades, beginning as a one-room education center and expanding into a K-12 comprehensive school designed to educate homeless youth. To find out more or to get involved, visit monarchschools.org. If you like Voice of San Diego's work and want to become a sponsor too, contact us at development@voiceofsandiego.org.
I'm Scott Lewis, and this is yet another edition of our special interview series. I think that we'll probably be doing more of this kind of thing where we separate out the interviews that we do for the podcast and run them as their own episode. Let me know what you think about that decision. This is we have a line set up, 619-354-1085. This week we have Councilman Scott Sherman came into the office, and we talked a lot about all of these various issues. I've watched a lot of San Diego City politics over the last 15 years, and every summer seems like it has some kind of defining issue. And this year, there are several issues that have thrown the city into chaos, and he has been in the center of all of them. So listen to the message or listen to the recording and tell us what you think. I would love to hear from you. Again, we have that line set up, 619-354-1085. Send us a question or something you would like to say, and maybe we can run it on the air. If you do not want what you say to be run on the air, well, let us know that as well. But if you do, tell us your full name and what area of town you are calling from, or whatever area of the world you're calling from. Again, it's Councilman Scott Sherman. And if you would like to suggest somebody else that you would like to hear from on the podcast, well, let us know. You can always find us on Twitter. I'm at VOSD Scott, or at Voice of San Diego, or the Voice San Diego podcast group on Facebook, or you can just email info@voiceofsandiego.org. Now, Scott Sherman. Okay, we are joined in the great Voice San Diego podcast studio, the most impressive podcast studio in downtown San Diego, right? Mm-hmm. Pretty clearly, by Councilman Scott Sherman.
Good morning.
Councilman, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
So what would you normally be doing today, the first day of recess after this grueling council season?
Getting ready for vacation and getting ready to head out of town, but instead we're staying here for a little while.
Are you going to like an island, you fish and stuff? Or?
Wife and I are taking off to Hawaii in a couple of days.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
It's the way to do it.
Yeah, been looking for. Actually, we're going to Hawaii to cool off.
Yeah, right. Well, we've got a lot to get into, so I won't mess around too much. But I want to start with this. Have you talked with the Jacksonville Jaguars yet?
Not yet, but I've had some discussions with the NFL, but nothing major.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that about?
Not at liberty to discuss just yet.
Wow. All right. So let's start with there's a lot of pressing big new issues, but the one obviously today. Now, this actually will come out after, so we'll just kind of set this up as like, what are you thinking going into this vote? And then we'll be able to, say how it turned out. The discussion is scheduled for 4 p.m. today to consider putting on the ballot as a council-led measure to raise the hotel room tax, expand the convention center, and pay for homeless services and roads. Now, the signature gathering campaign that was supposed to do this seems to have, I wouldn't say flamed out. They may have gotten enough signatures, but not for this.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, not for this ballot.
Right.
So what did you think when you first heard that news yesterday?
Wanted to know who messed things up. I mean, to me, if you've got the signatures and you've already come out with them, you're fairly confident that they're going to make it past the preliminary review. That didn't happen, and it's put everybody in a scramble.
Who do you think was responsible?
I don't know yet. I'm trying to find out. It could go, it could be staff. It could go all the way down to the actual signature collectors and when they started and how much effort they put into it. Because I remember most signature gathering campaigns, you see a lot of people out right away.
Yeah.
And this one took a while to ramp up. And I don't know if that early time of not gathering signatures may have hurt. Who knows?
You know what? So yesterday I was talking to somebody and I said, the only time I ever saw somebody collecting signatures on this measure was at the county fair. And the person I told that to started laughing and said, yeah, not in the city of San Diego.
Right, exactly.
Which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
And draws an audience from all over the county.
I've only seen Mission Valley signature gatherers.
Yeah, I'm pulling some threads on what happened, and it does seem like they deliberately waited, whether strategically to try to take advantage of some market advantage they thought there was there, or just out of some sort of bizarre decision. But
yeah, or a lot of times how it works too is if you've got signature gatherers out there getting paid by the signatures, and one's paying you $5 and one's paying you $2.50, and you've got a range of petitions in between there, they push the ones that pay them the most. So if you're not up in that competitive range, you're getting pushed to the back of the bus. And most people, even if they're inclined to go sign things, they can get through 2 or 3 and then they're going to be done.
So the putting it on as a council initiative is a very different thing. It's one thing for a citizens initiative and the people who are responsible for the citizens initiative to craft it themselves. It's another thing for the council to craft an initiative and to go through the many stages of process that those kinds of things go through, as we saw with a bunch of other initiatives.
Right.
And yet this one, you guys are just going to be asked to sign off on what this private group of, as bipartisan and diverse as it is, you guys are just asked to basically rubber stamp that. That's a really awkward position to be in, because you on the one hand would want maybe people to have a say on something that the city council is doing. And yet on the other hand, if you don't do this, the mayor's top priority, and plus these big priorities for the city, don't happen. So what are you thinking?
Right now, I'm fairly undecided. I've been supportive of the plan from the very get-go. I think we need to expand the convention center. I think we need to deal with homelessness issues, and we always have infrastructure problems. So the plan, the way it's put together, I'm in support. The problems I want to make sure is that what we're doing is legal. Make sure it's not violating anything that's going to give a lot of people grounds to sue. And if the city attorney comes out and says this is a legal path forward and this is how it's done, I'm familiar with the plan already.
Yeah.
So it'd be hard not to support it if it's a legal path to putting it on the ballot. And at the end of the day, the voters get to decide yay or nay.
The legality issue you'd be worried about most is the Brown Act, whether it was noticed properly. And
yeah,
such.
what we're allowed to do and we're noticed properly and those types of things. If they come up with some type of assurance that shows me here's the legal path forward, then I think I'm okay.
Yesterday, when it was revealed that, this extra count would be triggered, the mayor's office came out and said this was absolutely a scenario that they had planned for. Do you get the sense that this was expected or planned for?
The reaction at City Hall, I would probably say no.
Yeah.
From everybody that I talked to, it was pretty much, okay, we're going to get here. The signatures are gathered. We have our choices to put it on the ballot. That's it.
Did
Done.
the 10th floor just light up yesterday when
phones were pinging all over the place. It sounded like a choir and a chorus going off up and down the hall with all the different text dings.
Yeah. Well, so similarly, we had in the, I guess it would have been April, May, maybe as late as June, we had been hearing that there were problems with the signature gathering campaign. It wasn't, and not one or two, it was a pretty persistent whisper going around the city. And whenever we ask anybody about it officially, they would say, "Get out of here! Don't worry, everything's fine. What do you think we're gonna mess up the signature gathering? Come on." Had you heard about problems going on, and what was the kind of discussion around that at the time?
Hadn't heard of any, but with the body language of people and some of the last minute things that were going on, I knew they were having troubles.
Yeah.
I had someone knock on my door, like with 2 days left to gather signatures, asking if I'd signed yet and had a petition there ready to go. So if you're sending people door to door in the last couple of days, it's a pretty good signal that you're having problems.
Yeah. So you're a Republican, generally skeptical of tax increases. What does it feel like to vote for a tax increase? You know what the convention center is going to do, but the homeless part, there's no plan at all for how to spend that money. The mayor and the government's basically saying, we just need this money. We're going to figure out how to deploy it. And, your former colleague or ally, Carl DeMaio, has just blasted it, even though he supported a similar tax just for the convention center part. So how do you approach that decision from your priorities and why that's an okay investment?
Yeah, I've been very upfront from the very beginning. The only tax that I would see myself supporting is a tourist tax to help with the tourist industry. The other things that are put on there, I think, are needed and could help. This money could help. But the primary tax is a tourist tax on tourists that's going to, in the ultimate end, benefit the tourist industry and what we collect and help the city as well. So I'm fine with doing that. I mean, we were just talking about going to Hawaii. I didn't look to see what the tourist tax was because I wanted to go to that destination. Hmm. And with this increase in the tourist tax, it puts us on par with others. So if I'm looking at going to Phoenix or San Diego and the tourist tax is something I'm concerned about, it's about the same. I think I know where my decision's going to be.
So when we were trying to figure out how this was going to shake out yesterday, we're all working the phones like crazy. And I had in my head this idea that maybe the coalition behind this thing would try to do everything in their power to maintain some ability to call this a citizens initiative, because there's a potential real advantage there. 50% versus 66% is no small thing. And it seemed by the time that this was put on the city council agenda that maybe that was going to fly by the wayside, wouldn't be an option anymore. Congressman Scott Peters yesterday tweeted that he thinks there's a possible way for the city to craft an ordinance that puts this on the ballot as a city initiative, and yet say in some way that as the signatures are counted, if they're validated between now and November, that you'd be able to essentially substitute it. You'd declare them redundant and substitute it and be able to call it a citizens initiative. Have you heard any talk about that? Do you know how that would work?
I've heard some talk, and it's one of the things I'm waiting to hear the city attorney's opinion on, because those are some of the issues that I want to make sure we're doing right, because so many things nowadays, well, it's California, everything ends up in a lawsuit, but I want to make sure we've, dotted our I's and crossed our T's the best we can to prevent that from happening, because at the end of the day, lawsuits just cost the taxpayers money.
But it does seem like something that could be discussed today.
Possibly. I've heard people talking about that situation, but whatever the legal remedy is to make that happen, I'd have to have that vetted out in front of us today.
I mean, the thing is, there is a certain, it's weird, so I don't want to bless this thing, but there's a certain merit to it, which is simply that today you'll put something on the November 2018 ballot. Theoretically, the signature gathering campaign is still a living thing that's getting its signatures counted, that 30 days from now we could be told, now we'll vote for essentially the same measure in November 2020. And are we going to vote twice? Will that just be a zombie measure? Right. So in some way trying to consolidate them makes some sense. I just don't know how you get around all the legal matters.
And that's what I'm waiting to hear is, the notification issues. Can it be done that way? I mean, until we get advice from legal, I don't know the law well enough, and quite frankly, don't have the time to research it right now to find out if I can figure it out on my own.
Yeah, you got a little pressure to get something done, huh?
It's kind of typical at City Hall as of late. The important stuff gets dumped on you with 2 weeks to make a decision.
Well, I'm going to give you an unprecedented choice here. You got 3 different topics. You can choose which one to do first. The SDSU football lease renewal, vacation rentals, or the pension reform. Supreme Court.
Let's just go down the list as you put them on there.
All right. This week, Monday, the San Diego State University football program got a couple more years of life, at least, in the stadium that exists in Mission Valley. The city agreed to lease to a deal that has the university pay a lot more, but still far less than what it would cost to keep the stadium open.
Right.
We've been talking a lot about leverage. Andy and I have a little bit different view. I think on one hand, I think the city had a ton of leverage because they, they were the landlord of this building, and the tenant had nowhere else to go, and so they could have pressed them for more money.
That was their strategy: is I got nowhere else to go. So
Yeah, and Andy says, well, that itself is actually leverage for SDSU because there's no way the city was going to boot them. What did you actually hope would come out of that? Did you think you could get another $1 million or so a year?
I was hoping a deal would be struck to where we get, say, half a year's operating costs, because it's half a year for a football season to keep that place open. So pay up front the rent of half a year's operating costs. You guys keep the net on all the revenues, and hopefully you make your money back and some extra money. It's just like any landlord-tenant type arrangement, you know. I have a widget factory. You want to bring your widget business in. You bring it in, pay all your employees and all your operating costs, and you keep your profits. Just
that's interesting. So like kind of like what the Padres have, like give them control, and if they think it's going to be so profitable or whatever that they can make up a lot of the difference, well, then they can be in charge of that.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Well, we'll keep the field in place because that's what the rent's for, the building and keeping the field in good position. You run everything else, and good luck to you.
Yeah. Where do you think that broke down in the negotiations?
There was a lot of political pressure. I mean, the mayor is a SDSU alumni. There's a few on the dais up there, but my job is to look out for the taxpayers as a whole, not just all the alumni who came down and were sitting in the audience. I mean, the audience was packed with red and black shirts, and every single one was an alumni from San Diego State University. My job is not to look out for them. My job is to look out for the entire city and the taxpayer, and I think that's what I'm doing by trying to just say, I don't want to make money on you, but the taxpayers need to break even for what it's costing us to let you play there.
I actually printed out your response to that deal because it was so fiery.
I never get fiery.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask about. You said this epic failure follows a long and shameful local tradition of subsidizing sports at taxpayers' expense. And I actually had a little different question. So typically when we get really like fired up press releases in our inboxes, I feel like mostly from the council, they come from David Alvarez, who's, you know, positioned himself as like this opposition voice. Lately, they all come from you. They are fiery. I also printed out your response to the appellate court denying Mara Elliott's plea to have the Mission Valley measures kicked off the ballot. And you said, I'm pleased that these frivolous and expensive lawsuits have finally been put to rest. The people will have the final say in November, not the bureaucrats. Yeah. Have you been feeling a little frustrated lately, just apart from any of these individual issues?
Not a little frustrated. The first issue was San Diego State lease. They brought that lease to us in committee 2 weeks before we had it at council. The committee gave direction to go back to staff and work with staff to come up with a better deal for the taxpayers. They brought it back 2 weeks later, the exact same proposal, and council members who told them 2 weeks prior, go back and do a better deal, flipped and said, okay, we're good with it.
One of the things I didn't understand is there was a provision that said the SDSU is going to work to bring more events in. I don't understand if you didn't structure it where they get the benefit of that or whatever, or
what's their incentive, or
that they're in charge of it. Then what? So I didn't even understand the mechanism that they would recruit more people if they don't actually run the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was, oh, you'll work with us to find more revenues. Great. How about you guys just pay us the whole rent, work to find more revenues, and you keep it. Mm-hmm. It's not that hard. If you really truly believe that you can do that, then put some skin in the game and take the profits and take the risk. Just pay us our rent.
And it's interesting because the city's real estate department does that all the time. That's the basic lease structure at Belmont Park. That's the basic lease structure. It's a slightly different realm, but in a lot of the museums in Balboa Park, it's you pay a flat lease, mm-hmm. and then you're empowered to go make as much money as you can.
And I don't know why we don't do that with the stadium unless it's political pressure being brought to bear.
Well, just to push back on that perspective, sure. In the sense like, we have a lot of assets in the community that don't break even, that don't make more money, rec centers and football fields and baseball fields and such. What's the calculation that this one needed to break even? Why is it not worth actually just supporting as a community benefit?
My question is, how much of a community benefit it is? Yeah, it brings the campus people down for games and those types of things. But when it comes to actual revenues and those types of things, we've been subsidizing them for years. I mean, before all we got was $1 a ticket with about a 21,000 or so average attendance per game, and they got to keep everything else. I'm saying just pay us the rent and then keep everything else. I mean, that's a fairly standard business arrangement. Before it was a massive subsidy. Now it's a giant subsidy. We heard with the Chargers and everything else that people are tying about subsidizing sports. So let's get it to where we break even. That's all I'm asking. It's not like I'm saying let's make money on the university or anything.
Right.
But we've got a taxpayer asset and a taxpayer-funded organization that is renting it from us. We should at least get to a break-even point. Plus, they just put $2 million into a brand new locker room. I mean, that could have been the rent. We would have been just about at that break-even point.
All right, we good on stadium lease? Let's talk about vacation rentals. So the council decided that no home in San Diego could be set aside for a vacation rental, that if you want to rent to short-term visitors, you have to live at that property for at least 6 months of the year. And that is itself setting up an unimaginable crackdown on all of these beach and vacation rentals that some of which have existed for decades. Yeah. So it's something I asked the mayor over and over again, like, how really are we clearing out Mission Beach? It's just something I'm having trouble trying to picture.
Yeah, I heard you trying to get an answer on that.
So then we heard this week that HomeAway, Airbnb, and Share San Diego had decided to put that ordinance up for a referendum, try to get 36,000 signatures to force a referendum. We've seen
Which
that.
is easy. That always works.
Yeah, it always happens. And so we've seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen it with Walmart, with Barrio Logan, with
That's why I signed it.
Yeah, so you were the first to sign this thing.
Yeah.
Why do that, and what do you think is sort of the next few steps that would happen if that triggers?
Well, the reason I'm so passionate about this one is I'm just a property rights guy. I really believe that property rights is one of the foundational pillars of our Constitution. Without that, we don't have freedom, we don't have liberty. If you don't have those rights in your property, and without government telling you what you can and can't do, within reason, of course. I mean, can't put a dynamite factory next to a daycare, those type of things. So that's where it comes from. Plus, we have a serious legal problem with what was passed. And that's why Mission Beach was supposed to be carved out from the very beginning, because the city has allowed for decades for those vacation rentals to exist. We've collected fees. We've done all those things. So now with a stroke of the pen, we're looking at a constitutional taking problem. And if we do that, and it's found to be, we have to give compensation to every one of those short-term vacation rental owners who've been doing it for a long time. Many of whom are, a husband and wife, married couple who's had that for a couple of decades, and that's their retirement income. Without the income from something like that, they have no other source. We're just, because we had a vocal group of people said to ban them, we just took those livelihoods away from a whole bunch of people.
So the argument you're talking about is regulatory taking. This is the idea that if somebody's been making money doing something and you change the zoning around it, you might have seized their property in essence,
right,
and thus should have compensated them the way you would do eminent domain. Is that a fair reading of that?
Close enough. Yeah.
And so you're arguing that, and you said this, and a lot of people were kind of jarred by your statement, which was, sue us. We have screwed this up. You sue us. This is illegal.
Right.
Do you feel at all weird, like telling a group of people to sue the entity that you're basically a trustee of?
Not when I'm part of a group that is taking away people's rights. I'm going to stand up for people's rights every time. The right to vote, the right to own property, the right to free speech. Those things aren't negotiable in my book. They just aren't. And to me, this is a terrible infringement on people's property rights. I mean, if we looked at the meetings that happened at City Council on the first and second reading of the STVR issue, well over 90% of the people in the audience were from the beach area. I can't let the decisions of people in one area affect what we do to everybody's property rights in the rest of the city. And it just needs to be changed. Plus, the city never tried to enforce current existing law on the bad apples. We have noise ordinances. We have drunk in public. We have all these other ordinances that can be enforced. And that's why I like the proposal that we put forth the last time, because that took all the funding from fees and everything for short-term vacation rentals and put it towards 13 new code enforcement officers that would work nights and weekends. So we can, and if you had more than 3 violations, your permit was taken away from you. Let me go after the bad actors and hit them where it hurts in their pocketbook, and they'll quit being the bad actors. But I'm not going to go for a blanket ban that punishes the mom and pop who've been depending on that money for decades.
Do you think the city is capable of enforcing the ordinance that it passed?
I don't see how, and without a funding source and with the amount of possible licenses that they just took off the table to fund those code enforcement officers, I don't see how we do it unless we go into the general fund somewhere.
So the mayor proposed this thing that a lot of these platforms were okay with and seemed supportive of. It wasn't ideal, it wasn't the thing you had proposed. And then the council decides to do something very different that has a very different outcome for thousands and thousands of properties and these owners. And yet the mayor says he was totally on board with that too. Was that your sense that this was the same thing that the mayor was proposing?
Unless you consider something that's completely opposite the same, I didn't think so. I mean,
what do you think was going on there? Is he just trying to salvage the situation?
I don't know. You're going to have to ask him. I really don't know what the thinking was, because from what I saw, and even the city attorney kind of mentioned it the other day when we had the second reading. She said, hey, what was passed out of council is different than what was proposed. So how can you have the city attorney and them all saying this is different than what was proposed, which is a possible Brown Act violation, a different subject, and then come out and say, yeah, I'm glad they passed my plan. His plan was gutted.
Well, so there were a lot of people that were making the point with this vacation rental. You know, you did stand up as like kind of the pole that attracted a lot of heat and
I've
fire.
never done that ever in my job.
Well, there was some concern that you just completely didn't care about their issues, that you disregarded their perspective, that there's a lot of people very worried about their neighborhoods, and you didn't seem to be interested in that. What could you have told them about how this could have worked out differently?
Well, first, I wish they would have supported the compromise we had a while ago, because that was primary home plus 2 other properties. Still more restrictive than I would have liked, but it's a compromise from both sides, trying to get buy-in on both sides. And they wouldn't, the other side, the ones who were saying, neighborhoods first, this is destroying the character of our neighborhoods, they never wanted us to even think about the enforcement option on the bad actors first. And I don't want to start by ban. I mean, that's typical government overreach reaction. I'd rather start with enforcement. And if that doesn't work, then let's revisit it and talk about doing those things. But let's see if hitting these people in the pocketbook is where we could go. And every complaint that they had was noise complaints, parking complaints, those types of issues. Laws we already have on the books with, and I get way more complaints about month-to-month renters on those types of things. I mean, I can show you a couple places in my neighborhood where they're occupied by 3 or 4 college kids. Their night doesn't start till 11 o'clock. It doesn't end until 4:30 a.m. They're month to month. So what's next? Do I say you got to ban month-to-month renters because of the noise complaints? Well, that doesn't make sense. Let me try the enforcement first. If that doesn't work, then we'll look at the other side.
Okay, so this last week we heard the startling news. The Supreme Court had ruled that this initiative that eliminated pensions for future employees starting in 2012 was passed after some illegal decisions by the former mayor, Jerry Sanders. And now we are all wondering what that means, if the lower court will eventually just throw the whole thing out and force the city to claw back 4 years, 5 years, 6 years of experience and the thousands of employees that have been collecting 401k style retirement since then, and sort of somehow shift them back into pensions. What was, you came in, I believe, in 2012,
yeah,
right?
I was a big supporter of Prop B.
You were a supporter of Prop B, but you were after this measure. Right. And what was your sort of take on this case? Did you ever think it would reach this level? And did you ever take seriously that argument about the meet and confer issue?
Not really, because we'd heard from other courts along the lines before it got to PERB that, hey, look, you don't give up your rights as a citizen just because you got elected to office.
Mm-hmm. So just to background for the argument here.
Yeah.
So the mayor at the time is the chief labor negotiator for the city. And the labor unions argued that one of the laws that they have to deal with is that if they're going to change employee compensation or relations, they have to put forward a meet and confer process first, just talk to the unions basically,
Right.
and see if anything like this can be done without whatever they're thinking about. He disregarded that. The city attorney said that wasn't necessary, and now the Supreme Court has ruled that indeed it was necessary, and thus this whole thing was maybe born in an illegal act.
The state Supreme Court,
Right?
There's still one chance left is at the federal level. And
Well, that's a good question. Do you support going?
Yes.
Really?
yeah,
Do you think that?
let's get it settled once and for all. And I think free speech issue is at stake here. And like I said, that's part of those three that I'm really passionate about. So let's take it all the way to Supreme Court. If they take it, let them decide and decide if once you become an elected official, do you give up some of your rights as a citizen?
Well, it's not just elected official. Like Carl DeMaio could have done it,
Right.
but the mayor specifically decided he wanted to be identified as one of the leaders and the creators of this, and he does have a labor
Right.
job. So, do you just think that's
That's what I want the Supreme Court to weigh in on.
Mhm.
Is where are we? Because if you take it a little further, if he went and said we want to do this, they said no, and then he goes, says, okay, I'm going to do it as a citizen. Would that have been okay or not if he just had the discussion? So it's like, where is that line? And the courts ruled all the way along until we hit PERB and the state Supreme Court about this issue. They didn't also rule on the legality of the initiative itself. It was just the meet and confer side of things.
It seems like there's a huge range of options now that it's kicked back to the appellate court. It could just be thrown out entirely. It could be thrown out for certain people. It could just be, okay, go talk to the unions after the fact, I guess. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about different possibilities or people discussing what they think might happen?
Some it goes the gamut. Some think the PERB, the appellate court will refer to PERB and let that ruling stand. They may do something else. They may kick it back to the Supreme Court for some remedy. I mean, I've been hearing all kinds of things. It's going to play out at the end of the day. One of the problems we're going to have, too, is if we go into meet and confer to try and figure out a remedy to solve this outside of the legal system, you've got a bunch of employees, especially like firefighters who are on their 401k. Their 401ks are an 11% match, including overtime. That's a very good benefit. They may not want to go back.
Mm-hmm.
They may fight us and say, no, we're happy where we are. We don't want to go back to the old system because what we have now is beneficial to us. So it's got a lot of working parts, and it'll probably go on for a while. But Prop B itself, the mechanism is still in place and still moving forward until we hear otherwise.
One, piggybacking on that, there had been so many pension reforms before Prop B that the pension option that they would be opting back into is a severely scaled back version. There are still some bureaucrats that have the gold-plated pensions from years ago, but that's not the one that they would be opting out of their 401ks into. They'd be into a much smaller pension system.
The general employees, the firefighters have a little better.
Yeah. But the general employees will be going back to a more restrictive defined benefit plan, and they could probably do better sticking with their 401k in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a decision that's going to have to be made if we get into that meet and confer process. But Prop B, even after it was passed, a lot of the reforms and changes were negotiated with the unions in the city, despite the Prop B stuff that was going on at the same time.
Let's zoom out a little bit. So we have this. This has caused, it probably lit up the 10th floor too, as people were wondering how this would work out. We have this signature gathering flub. We have this ongoing discussion about the convention center. It's
Valley
haunted my whole career here. Mission Valley, the stadium. We have this sort of, it feels like this is a real low point in being able to accomplish things as a civic culture, build things, but also just solve long-running dilemmas like the vacation rentals, homelessness. We have a really awful report that people in these tents and emergency shelters aren't necessarily graduating to more permanent housing at any of the rate that we would hope they would. We have just it seems dark, and do we have a rudderless city right now?
It starts to feel that way at times because politicians by nature are worried more about their next election as opposed to making a decision and doing something and moving things forward. So many times I hear people say, look, I'm supportive of this, but it might be a negative mailer. It might hurt me in my re-election campaign. So I've got to take a different position. I can't do that. I mean, I've got 868 days left in this job.
Nothing.
But my goal when I started was just to come down to City Hall, try and do the best I can, and go back home when I was done. Too many people look at this as a career, and then they start letting the political influences, the donor influences, all those things get in the way of their decision making.
But get into that further. That what you're arguing is that it creates what extraordinary cautiousness.
Yes, a do nothing mentality, especially when it gets close to election seasons. I mean, it just look. You're not going to make everybody happy all the time. I tell my people all the time, look, my job is to make as many people as happy as possible, and I'm sorry you're not one of them.
But so let's apply.
Politicians won't do that. They won't stand up. They'll let 20 people come in who are about an agenda and about driving something and getting it done. Talk to them in their office 4 or 5 times, sway their influence when they don't realize those 20 people are showing up, but there's 20,000 here who aren't even concerned with this issue. Why are you letting these issues stop you from making decisions?
But let's apply that thinking to the vacation rental thing. They actually did make a rather bold, decision to crack down on thousands of properties. Would you argue there, though, that is itself a product of a cautiousness that went out of control? Or?
Yes, because they kept listening to the more vocal group about how this is, and it was 2 council members and the beach community. They let the beach community and those people sway their decisions over property rights. Sometimes I've seen people get their decisions swayed over what they told me personally. David Alvarez, for a good example. On the first short-term vacation rental where we had 4 people signed a compromise, David was a co-sponsor of that. When it came to council, the unions came down and put pressure on him. He voted against the measure he co-sponsored. That's how things get stalled. That's how things don't get done. And you end up with crazy alternatives instead of compromise in the middle.
It's odd. Some of the things I see, this is, slightly different than what you're saying, but some of the things I see people reacting to are, it's like, I don't even see the political salience in it. Like, I think the one I remember in 2014, Lori Zaff was up for re-election, and her opponent really latched on to a proposal that the city was moving forward on to upzone properties in the Bay Park area near the Mid-Coast trolley stops there. And yeah, they had a crazy town hall where they were booing everybody and screaming, and they went crazy, and it seemed like a really big deal. But Lori Zaff won re-election by like 15 points. Like, it wasn't even close.
That's what I keep trying to remind my council members is, look, that's the vocal group over here.
Yeah.
There's a ton of people out there who are going to work every day, supporting their family, putting a roof over their head, and they don't concern themselves with those issues. Make sure that the streets are good, make sure their neighborhoods are safe, those types of things. But when you're talking about, difference between 20 foot and 30 foot and those kind of things, the general people don't, the inside the beltway concern themselves with it.
Yeah.
But everybody else who votes when the time comes, they don't concern themselves with it. Same with a lot of times with the community groups, and they're good for your ears out into the community. But you also have to remember there's a big part of the community that doesn't even know there's a community group in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And those people have to be taken into consideration too, because even though they're not as involved, they're still part of the community.
Yeah.
Some of your more pointed statements lately have been directed at the city attorney, Maura Elliott. Sarah talked about the one about the effort to throw those initiatives off.
Yeah.
A quick point on that I'm curious about. The both initiatives really do. Her argument is they overly bind the city council and mayor. They say you must sell to these 2 groups in different situations. And, that does feel kind of weird. It's one thing to change the law, a zoning law or a marijuana regulation law or whatever. It's another thing to say the mayor must agree to sell to this person. You know what I mean? Like sort of guide their actions. Why isn't that something we should be alarmed about?
Because it's splitting hairs, and we're suing ahead of the game. I mean, we're suing on 2 proposals that may not even get past the voters.
Mm-hmm.
So then we just spent a whole bunch of taxpayer money suing the taxpayer on something we don't even know is going to pass. If we're going to sue, let's sue it after.
Okay.
But wouldn't it be nice to have had some legal certainty around Prop B ahead of June 2012?
Yeah, that took like 6 years. Yeah.
Given where we are right now.
But along those lines too, I can also have an opinion on something or a contract, say. I can go into a room with 10 lawyers and they'll give me 12 different opinions on what it says. So you have to kind of go down those lines. But suing the taxpayers, I mean, you got to look at it. On both sides of that issue, there was about 250,000 signatures that were gathered. They wanted the right to vote. Why are we spending their money to prevent them from actually voting? And if there's going to be lawsuits after the fact, if one of them passes, which there will, all those issues would have been brought up by private individuals and private entities and not paid for by the taxpayer.
Do you respect Mara Elliott as a lawyer? Do you think she's good?
Yeah, I mean, Mara worked with me when I was chair of audit committee. She was my city attorney. She's a competent attorney. I'm concerned about her chief of staff, quite frankly, Jerry Braun. He's a political animal. He's not an attorney. He claims attorney-client privilege, even though he's not. And he comes from a political world. And to me, the city attorney's office is supposed to be the attorney for the city and not interjecting politics.
What kind of impact does he have?
Well, chiefs usually have the ear of...
No, I mean, like, what kinds of things has he done that have produced negative outcomes?
Oh, Jerry's been... He gets to defer to on everything before the city attorney makes a decision. And I'm like, wait a minute, he's not even an attorney. Why are you turning to somebody for legal and those types of advice if the guy's not an attorney?
Neither an attorney or elected.
Right. And he has a lot of influence. I mean, he just does. At one point, the city attorney was mad at me and told me I had to go through Jerry before I talked to anybody in the city attorney's office.
Really?
Yeah. That came back when I was about ready to have Jerry Braun page when we were in committee so I could ask a question of the attorney.
Did you guys iron it out?
Ironed it out. Mara and I meet on a regular basis just to go over what's happening what's going on with the city. And I respect Mara a lot because no matter our differences, we can have political differences, but we'll still take the time to meet with each other, talk civilly, be upfront with each other, and let us know where we're going.
Well, Scott Sherman, really appreciate your time. We'll look forward to your vote later, and
should be a fun day.
Yeah, enjoy your trip after that's all over.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.